Imagine that you want to book a vacation to Tokyo and you simply tell your AI agent, hey, I want to spend this much money. Now go make it happen. Take care of my flights, my hotel, and go make my dinner reservations. Find the best restaurants. Do it. This kind of easy, frictionless outsourcing is the promise of AI agents. And we will be going deep on AI agents in a conversation with one of the most influential builders in the AI space in today's episode of AI Curious. My name is Jeff Wilser. I'm a journalist, I'm a human, and I'm curious about AI. Now, we have talked about AI agents before, and we will be talking about them more in the future, a lot more. AI agents are easily the hottest topic of 2025 outside of DeepSeek. So today, I am delighted to speak to one of the true OGs of the AI agents world, Humayun Sheikh, the CEO of Fetch AI. Now, this company, Fetch AI, is not some new startup that's hopping on the AI agents bandwagon. They were founded in 2018, way before it was cool. And Humayun was a founding investor of DeepMind way before that was cool and before it was sold to Google. In other words, his credentials in the AI space are bulletproof. So for today's episode, instead of a breezy overview of AI agents, I wanted to go deeper. Humayun and I get into the current landscape of AI agents, what they're good at, what they're not, and then what will it take for them to truly go mainstream. And about halfway through our conversation, Humayun says something that's borderline shocking. The tech for AI agents is already here. We've already done it. It's fully formed. AI agents exist and they can do their thing. The problem, though, is there's no real common language, no shared protocol, no infrastructure for your agents to talk to my agents. And then what are the odds that Apple's iOS will play nice with your agent or my agents? We are missing connective tissue. We're missing a Google for AI agents. And that's actually what Humayun and Fetch are building. Ultimately, for Humayun, his North Star is that AI agents will become not more prominent, but invisible. They will just make your life easier in surprising ways. We get into what that could look like, as well as the tech stack that must be built to make that happen. Now, Fetch is helping to build that stack, and towards the end, Humayun announces the launch of a new product that could accelerate the entire AI agents timeline. I had a blast nerding out with Humayun, and he gives us a bunch to chew on. So for now, please enjoy my conversation with Humayun Sheikh, CEO of Fetch AI. Humayun, welcome to AI Curious.
Hi, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm excited to jump into the wild world of AI agents. Let's begin with you and your team. Let's start with an overview of Fetch's mission. What's your North Star and kind of how does that fit into the broader AI ecosystem?
So we're building two things. One, we're building a framework for you to deploy agents. And second, we're building a Google of agents. So think of Google, which is the search and discovery mechanism. If now just go a year forward or 2 years forward, then you think how many agents will exist, right? And how many agents will be doing how many tasks? How are you going to find them? Just a very simple question. I mean, think of all these websites. Now convert all these websites into agents. I mean, that's the minimum you're going to have.
My guess is there's at some point we'll have billions of agents, right? If each person has multiple agents, we'll be in a world soon, I would guess, of billions of AI agents scurrying around doing things under the hood.
That's only if one agent is offering just one service and that's enough to connect with. But if your intent includes 10 microservices to deliver one service, then you have 10 times even more. So how are you going to find them? It's a very simple question. I mean, it's a very obvious question. How are you going to find them? So, and how are you going to connect with them? And so let's say your LLM does the job of, okay, you need to do this, and this, right? You're going to arrange a party, go order balloons, go do this, go do that, go do that. If you create a party agent then okay, the party agent will go and it'll say, okay, I want to connect with this API, I want to connect with this, I'll order this, I'll order this. But that's not the efficient way. That's not ultimately where we're going to end up. Every service will be represented by another agent. And to find that agent, there has to be a place to go and find them.
I want to dive deeper in a bit on what exactly you guys are building. I think it'd be helpful first for listeners to give a bit of a lay of the land now of how would you describe the current state of play of AI agents? Where are we in the larger roadmap to get to this kind of AI agentic world? Kind of what were the key milestones recently? OpenAI has announced tasks. How would you describe where we are, and what are the key inflection points that listeners should be aware of?
Yeah, so large language models are getting pretty good, right? So your language understandings are going to become better and better. The reasoning behind that understanding is also becoming much better because you are now reasoning what you should respond to and how you should respond to it. And we've seen the explainability of that coming through. But that's only the beginning because all you're doing at this point is trying to get the model to understand the intent.
Can you briefly define intent in this context to make sure listeners follow that connection?
Well, the intent is, let's say you want to go for a dinner with five friends, right? That's your objective and that's your intent. So you ask that to your agent. Now,
Yep.
from there on, a human would automatically understand that you have five friends, you prefer Italian, you're going to book all of that, you're going to go and they live in this region, this area, so you're not going to start booking in different cities. You're going to arrange that, you're going to send an email out or text message out or calendar invite out. So all these tasks, they start from that intent that I want to have a dinner with five of my friends. So
Mm-hmm.
then intent gets translated into task, and the
Mm-hmm.
task then gets broken down into subtasks, and each subtask then converts into a service or a microservice. So I'm
Got it.
going to make a payment, I'm going to book something. These are small tasks, but they are, I mean, call them subtasks or microservices or whatever you
Yep.
want to call them, right? Like
Which the
so,
irony is actually not that hearing. It's not that different from just
yeah,
traditional business project planning. Like, okay, we want to announce this product launch in at the end of the third quarter. Okay, to do that, we have to do this thing from advertising, this thing
yeah.
from inventory supply, and on and on, right? In smaller and smaller chunks and tasks.
The LLMs are
Yeah.
becoming very good at that, right? So they can do some planning for you. But they, at the moment, here's the problem. You can
Yeah.
you can ask it to plan something, right? But it doesn't know what actually exists. How do I get to it? Where do I get to? I mean, how do I go and discover all these services? Which is where the operator system comes in, because the operator system says, well, all these APIs that existed, we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
go through them, and I'm gonna see which one is relevant. I'm gonna connect and I'm gonna interact and I'm going to return my responses and I can do the action, right? At the moment. But that's fairly inefficient because everybody has to have a one-to-one integration. So now let's say you have 10 meta agents. All these LLMs are becoming cheap. Everybody's launching their AI agent. Now,
Mm-hmm.
every AI agent is going to have to find those services. So there has to be a place to find those services. Where do these
Mm-hmm.
agents go? They go online, they
It,
search the website. I mean, that's inefficient.
if I can, I'm going to take a stab at trying to synthesize some of this. I've heard you correctly that in one sense, the tech exists to create these AI agents that can perform specific tasks like getting the rental car or getting your Uber to get to the point from point A to B. That can happen. So, but there's a broader industry ecosystem challenge, if I'm hearing you right, that there are so many of these companies and projects developing AI agent solutions in different silos. And so there's not really a connected framework or a language where all these AI agents from project A, project B, project C are speaking the same way. And you mentioned there's no Google search yet, and you guys are working to build something like that. but there's also really no like shared vocabulary, shared language, shared protocol across AI agents in any kind of trusted way. So until we get some kind of agreed upon protocol infrastructure for AI agents so that your agents and my agents and our listeners, the podcast agent, can all speak together and work together, we're not going to see any true mainstream adoption. Am I close on this framework?
You're actually spot on. I mean, I couldn't have put it better, because really that's what needs to happen now. But I'm not saying, well, it's not happening because we are actually moving in that direction. So it's not that
Yeah.
it's not happening. It's just that we're thinking of like a year or 2 years ahead now, where we're seeing all of this happening. Everybody's building these solutions. So, I mean, there is a lot of hype about agents. I mean, in Web3 space as well. I mean, I've got connected to Llama, and I can launch an agent who can speak to you. Wow, that's great. I mean, it can read some Twitter, and I can post something. But I know, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of that, but there is a lot of very interesting actual agents which are actually performing tasks which are very useful, like marketing, tweeting, analyzing all the
Well,
content.
let's go there right now. So what are some examples of AI agents? What are some kind of use cases that are already happening as of early 2025? This is actually happening in the real world right now. It's not just purely speculative. What are some examples that you're seeing that kind of gives you encouragement? Okay, this is actually starting to become a real thing.
Well, I mean, software development is quite an interesting one, very useful one, where you Copilot or the likes, you can actually build software, you can actually launch a service, you can ask the agent to go and launch some kind of service, and the reason why I can do that quite nicely is because it's a software based, language based, and then you can actually do integrations, learning from API documents. You can actually do the integration, and then another person. But here's the problem: so you can build one solution, and I can build one solution using the same
Yeah.
agent. But there are different. We can be doing same solutions, but writing the code twice. Although we're using agents, and it'll be quicker, but it's a waste of
It's
code.
inefficient, right?
It's very inefficient. So if
Right.
you launch a service, what you want is your agent to be able to deal with 50,000 requests at the same time, and just don't need to keep rewriting the code, but you actually still deliver the service when the request comes to you. So I think what you said, which was quite interesting, is that we have the basis of the infrastructure already. I mean, we have TCP/IP, we have communication, we have web, we already have websites. So yes, and I think one of the ways to look at it is that how can we convert each website into an agent, right? What if each
Hmm.
website was an agent? Because
Hmm.
then you have the discoverability, which perhaps not right now with Google in the way that Google is, but let's say you make them discoverable, which is what Fetch does in effect, that you can actually convert each website into an agent, and you can communicate with that website. But even then, it's inefficient, because now you have the whole e-commerce system sitting behind it. What are the actions that you're taking? If it's an informational site, that's okay. The agent can represent in textual form. But what if you have to carry out some actions? Then you have to do API integrations with the agent. Well, I mean, as soon as you do that, I mean, that's very inefficient, right? But the agents can read the document, actually create the API interactions themselves, which is that next step forward. But what do we have to do to keep not doing that? Is that API is represented, or that e-commerce system or that service is represented by an agent, and you, when you need that service, you discover it and you connect with it autonomously, dynamically, and then deliver the service. So I think to your question, what other kind of use cases we are seeing, I think software development is really interesting one. Again,
Yep.
social media amplification is another interesting one, because you could actually create these agents to do the likes and through APIs. And as long as there is an API, you can actually automate the system. Automating the system has been around for quite a long time.
Also, how is that? I think a lot of skeptics will say, okay, that sounds like a bot. It sounds like an annoying bot farm that's like just adding spammy comments and likes and making social media which is already a pretty dark place, even darker and more annoying. Is there a good version of that? Is there something that's actually helpful of AI agents in this world?
Yeah. But but that's happening. I reserve
Yeah,
judgment.
you're right. For better or worse, it is happening.
It
That's
is
fair.
happening.
That's fair. It is
So I
happening.
think we see the usefulness of it. What is not happening, and I'm quite surprised why it's not happening, is people just don't seem to yet appreciate that you don't just build one thing. What you need to do is you need to build these small services and make them visible so people can actually connect them and use them. And we have to stop
Hmm.
rebuilding them. Because everybody, so
Mm-hmm.
there's 10 same agents doing same things, which 10 teams have built using similar technology. And why are we building them? And then we're forcing people to go, oh, use mine or use mine. Well, why should I have to choose? And to choose, I have to search and to look for. And that's not the best way of dealing with it.
Couldn't
What I
agree more. And I think there'll be a lot of companies that a year or two from now we are no longer around. Is my just layperson's guess. Given how many projects are doing very similar things, it's hard to imagine a world where all 37 of these very similar sounding building rails for agents. It's hard to imagine how they're all going to be succeeding. I'd love to switch gears a bit from the kind of back end infrastructure prism and switch more to from the user perspective. What, if you had to guess, will be the first true breakaway hit use cases of AI agents where it will cross over to the mainstream? And then when do you imagine that will happen?
I, I mean, if I could guess that, right? It'd be a multi-million dollar question, right? But I just generally feel what we will have is perhaps not such a big thing, just one big thing. I think that kind of has
Yeah,
happened already with OpenAI when OpenAI released the ability for LLMs. And I think
yeah,
what we will probably see is an improvement in the service. So, I mean, I can pick up the phone and I can ask Siri to do stuff which it doesn't do properly yet. I think
terrible. Yeah.
when we start seeing that change, and I think that's the change which is going to really bring people to actually use it. I mean, the overexcitement of just reading text and writing assignments using ChatGPT and doing analytics and writing business plans. I mean, great use case, but ultimately everybody's going to do it, and that data is going back and feeding, and so everybody would probably just generate similar types of business plans. And so unless we start, I mean, there's not going to, in my opinion, there will not be one big use case. I think it will be
Mm-hmm.
a delivery of a actual working use case. Doesn't matter how easy it looks at the moment, but a
Mm-hmm.
coherent and a bit more finalized way of delivering a service. Like if I could just say, hey Siri, I need to have dinner with some, oh, sorry, just activated. Do
Oh, Siri, enter the chat.
I'm gonna have dinner with Jeff,
Oh, mine did too. My Siri is now freaking out also. So we have both our Siris engaged on the podcast now. This is great.
So,
AI
so
in action.
if I can just do and say that and say to my agent, hey, go and book everything for me. I'm going to have dinner with
Yeah,
Jeff at 5 p.m. or 7 p.m. If we can deliver that perfectly without me
yeah.
having or you having to do any intervention, and we just go, yes, that's fine, do it. I think that would be a breakthrough moment. We can't do it right now because it's too clunky, because not everybody is onboarded in the right way, because we do need to do this the right way for it to work. I mean, having a bot which can go on a website and click on the click, as exciting as it might be, it's not efficient to deliver a commercial service.
I love the example you just gave. I think it's a perfect kind of concrete one to latch onto for a moment, and that could help us tease out this next phase here, or next inquiry I had. What do you think is the main barrier, or what are the main constraints between the world we're in now and the world you described, where you can say, "Cool, like Jeff and I, we want to have dinner at 7 o'clock. My agents and your agents will get together. They will figure out where we're going to eat, if they're going to get a reservation, how they can do all the details, right? What is the main, and we already touched upon a couple. We talked about the lack of kind of a shared vocabulary, protocol, infrastructure, if you will. What else is it? Is it a legislative issue? Is it a regulatory issue? Is it a comfort level culturally? What do you think are the main barriers we have to get over to arrive at that world where our agents can plan a dinner for us?
I don't think there's that much. I think the
Wow.
only barrier to entry, I mean, I can showcase that model to you tomorrow. We have it. We have it running. If you have a Google Calendar, I have a Google Calendar. I can actually arrange a convenient time for us to have dinner, and I can go and book it. I mean, my agents and your agents can collaborate and do it. Now,
Hmm.
where's the
Hmm.
problem? I mean, the problem is our interface to those agents is clunky.
Okay.
Like, for
Yep.
example, iPhone is a closed system. We have to get into iPhone to deliver that service to you. You're not going to download another app and then try and
Right.
do another something. So it needs to be that bigger players need to become more open. So although it's not a regulatory issue, it's definitely a closed ecosystem issue because the entry point of us speaking to our agent is barriered by these bigger players like Google or Apple. The solutions underneath today fetch we can do all of it, and we can do it very
Hmm.
smoothly, and we can do it without the one-to-one API integration because we have a we have a directory, or call it a directory, but call it a kind of a nexus of Google or whatever you want to call it for agents, where you can actually list all these agents and my meta agent can go and find them and connect with them and actually deliver the service that we need. I mean, it can go to your calendar, check your agent's calendar. But how do you actually interact with it is the problem because your meta agent is
Yeah.
blocked by the bigger players. And I think that's one of the barriers of and making
That
this.
that makes total sense. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I'd like to first widen the lens out even further, almost philosophically, before narrowing it back again to get more into what Fetch is doing now and what you have coming down the pipeline that you can share with us. On the philosophic front, it almost to me, I have an almost hard time even processing how this could impact the world. Especially when you think about how broad the definition of AI agent can be, right? It could be as specific as arrange a dinner, and then or do you say, okay, I need to plan a wedding for me. You're the wedding planner, and then do all the various chunks. Go find a florist. Go find a ice sculpture person, right? So when you start thinking about it in that context of how much of human activity AI agents can be doing, you've been in this AI agent space for years and years, since way before it was cool and trendy. So you've spent as much time as anyone on the planet thinking about this stuff. So putting aside infrastructure and tech, but more just about how its AI agents are going to impact our lives in the world, in the economy. What do you think are the most important impacts? And maybe what's an impact or two that AI agents will someday have in the world that most people are not thinking enough about?
For me, the technology is best when it's invisible. So if we can make this invisible, then I think that's the biggest impact it will have. If it exists in the background and we don't even feel it or see it, I think that's probably when we've achieved what we need to achieve. Now, but there is a flip side of how this is changing the world, right? It's changing the world in the sense that I'm going to take an example, slightly different example to what we have been talking about.
Sure.
Self-drive cars. Self-drive cars is one place where AI is making a big impact, right? You're going to have robocabs. You don't need drivers. That's a huge impact when your lorries are going around
Yep.
doing whatever they're doing. But these self-drive cars need to interact with something. They need to interact with vehicle to vehicle. They need to interact with infrastructure. They need to interact with the road. They need to interact with where the destination. They need to interact with
Mm-hmm.
buildings. Now, if you convert and if you extrapolate this whole concept of agents into that, then you start seeing every infrastructure item, every infrastructure interaction is represented by an agent, then
Hmm.
your self-drive cars becomes just that much easier, because now you have this sixth sense. Effectively, you don't actually have to see
Hmm.
something.
I
You
like
can
that.
actually get information in the back. And the biggest problem at the moment is one company trying to do it is very difficult, but each
Hmm.
and every agent communicating with an infrastructure which belong to a city or a council, and they can actually launch agents which can interact with, as you drive into a vicinity, it can interact with you. In the background, this will just make traffic congestions easier. It will make delivery of the service easier. It will make the cost down, bring the cost down, make it much more efficient. All of that, the agentic network is the most suited for, because you have to have
Hmm.
complexity, you have to have interoperability, because it's a big problem. Interoperability is a big problem. You have so many systems. How
Hmm.
do you interact?
Yep.
Payment system, this system, that system. If you can actually remove that friction, and agents and agentic networks and agent technology can actually do that, then you've just made everybody's life much easier. Financially, it's much more viable. Economically, it makes sense. And I think for me, what is more important is not to talk about agents, but to actually use them without knowing that you're using them. The only interaction you have is the AI is with your meta agent, and everything else just
A key word you said there, I think is great, is easier, right? So invisible and easier. So kind of in the best case scenario, a lot of the things we do not enjoy doing in life will just get easier, like
just get
booking the
done.
flights, calling customer service, scheduling and arranging, figuring out, oh, I need to get four people on a Zoom call together. I need to talk, like Asian can do all that stuff, right? So making our lives easier in probably a wide range of verticals and areas that we haven't even fully, I certainly haven't even fully processed yet, but it could just make everything smoother and easier. I love that. Now I'd love to hear narrowing back the lens. And I think that this is great context now to give listeners a much better sense of the overall state of play of industry. Talk a bit more about, because you mentioned a high level what you guys are building. Talking more of what you're focused on now and what you can tease is coming in the future. And I'm also, if you can share a bit about how blockchain in Web3 fits into all of this. I think a lot of folks from and one thing I've over the last several months, I've sprinkled in more and more of my thoughts about decentralized AI and blockchain and why it's actually more important and relevant than folks might realize. But I'd love to hear your perspective on that as well.
So let's look at the whole thing. I mean, I don't know if you're fully aware or your listeners are. We did a merge of four projects. We called it Artificial Superintelligence Alliance, and the idea there was to put a tech stack together, which actually makes spinning out applications easy. So I'll come back to that, but let's talk about what we want to do here and what Fetch is doing here. So Fetch, with the infrastructure that we're building, and I think that's what most people don't understand. We're not spinning out agents. That's not what we do, right? Spinning out an
Mm-hmm.
agent, just putting an agent together and raise funding around that agent is not what we do. What we're doing is we're
There are
building
many,
the
many, 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 many folks doing that. To your point.
yes. There
Yeah.
are many people do. I mean, don't take it away for them, because they do a great job. They do something, but we don't do that. What we are
Right.
doing is we're building the infrastructure where once you have a service available, you can actually list it, and you can list it on our system. So now, if you want to build an agent and you want to host an agent, because you can host an agent anywhere, but if you really want this to become something people can easily use, then you need to give them the ability to host the agent. So we give you the toolkit to actually put an agent together, um, a hello world type agent. Then you can actually
Mm-hmm.
start using the SDK to connect that agent to our search and discovery system. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when you connect your agent, doesn't matter where you built it. We are agnostic at what framework you use to build it and where do you deploy it. We can provide you the framework, we can provide you the hosting, but that's not essential that you use it. You can host it, you can build it, you can do whatever you like. You can register it using our SDK onto Agentverse. Agentverse is like a hub of agents where all
Mm-hmm.
these agents can be found. So if you're looking for a service and you want to find an agent which provides that service, you can type in and find it, and then you can connect to it. Or you can use our automated dynamic search engine, which enables you to give the intent, and it
Mm-hmm.
automatically tells you which agents you can use to deliver the final service.
Which, as an aside, quick interjection, this sounds, if I hear you right, like precisely the main problem we identified earlier, that there is not this shared language, there's not a common infrastructure that all these disparate projects hook into. So you guys are, if I heard you right, Fetch is building this common language infrastructure that can be a way for all these many different AI projects to hook into, speak the same language, and be able to, so we're not reinventing the wheel each time.
That's it. And and there is a communication layer. So you have a common language. You can, doesn't matter what your agent does. You have a common language to request information or provide information or exchange data. You can do all of that. So that's the basic layer of the infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've got that, you can actually host an agent, you can launch an agent, you can actually connect one agent to another agent and let them exchange information. You can actually do all of those things. But there's a deeper problem that I think we need to understand here. If
Hmm.
an agent is doing something, generally this agent needs to have a machine learning model to take the input from it to carry out an
Mm-hmm.
action. What is the Twitter analysis telling me before I post something, right? So I
Hmm.
need to know what information, and then I need to go to an LLM and say, write me a tweet based on this information. Then I take the tweet and then I post it. So I have these different things that need to happen. So what one of the core things here is this AI or machine learning model, which is giving you all of these things, because not one model alone is going to solve all the problems. So you're
Right.
arranging a supply chain, you have your own model. A supply chain in a particular sector will have its own model.
Well, you
So
mentioned you used the word commodities earlier, right? So this is in the same. You mentioned these models are becoming commodities, and so just like any commodity, you need almost a marketplace kind of mechanism to be able to sift through the different commodity options, saying, "Cool, of these 25 different options, this one's cheapest and best quality. I'll use that one today. Tomorrow could be different."
yes. So here's my prediction. I take a prediction from two or three. I assess those predictions. I make an evaluation, which one is the right one, which is the wrong one, and then I use that in my execution. And then I use that. And if I did a good result, then I'll report back that that was great. If it didn't, I will have to say no, and I'll go to the next one. And then I evaluate that, so I can rate them. So it's like saying, I mean, here's the service. I'm going to rate this service. So in this case, what you have to build is that. So you need a underneath the agentic layer, which is just the
Mm-hmm.
application layer. You
Mm-hmm.
need to have the services layer, which is one of the biggest services is going to be machine learning models. How do you
Mm-hmm.
build small, specific, very vertical specific, which do specific things which large language models can't do? So how do I build
Right.
those models? How do I deploy those models? Where do I get the data from? How do I train them? How do I earn money from it? Because I have the model. What do I do? How do I make money? I put an agent on top of it and I launch it in the Agentverse marketplace. When
Mm-hmm.
somebody uses my service, they pay for it. So if your model can
Mm-hmm.
tell me it's going to rain or not, and somebody
Mm-hmm.
wants that information, you don't have to go and write the model. You don't have to go and start connecting or building a model, deploying the model, and start doing the whole thing. I can come to your model. Let's say you have a model which predicts the weather in a certain location. I can say, here's my location. Is it going to rain or not? Yes, no. And I'll pay you 1 cent. Because on the basis of that, I'm going to
Right.
either order a cab or book a train ticket.
And I understand that you guys have some launches and updates and new features coming in the pipeline, given that framework and context you just shared? Anything else you can tease us with of what
Yeah.
kind of Fetch is
So
building down the road?
yeah, so the whole stack. Let me just lay out the stack, and then I'll give you some
Perfect.
insight. So you have the agentic layer, which is the application layer. Underneath it, you have this machine learning model. You have the marketplace where people can build machine learning models. We can launch them, connect them with an agent. So you need that algorithm side. You need to have models. So there's a whole layer of models,
Yep.
deployment, inference serving. Underneath that, you have kind of data. So you have data tools. How do
Yep.
you bring privacy? How do you train these models? And then underneath that, you have the compute. So, okay, you have the model. How can I just deploy it rather than going to Amazon or some other player or some other
Right.
market, find compute? I can just deploy it. I can click the button, it deploys. It deploys on a decentralized kind of marketplace of compute. You don't
Got
have to
it.
worry
Yep.
about it. Just and then underneath that, you have the blockchain because I think you asked about the blockchain. So how
Mm-hmm.
do I
Mm-hmm.
keep record of all of this happening, right? I have 10
Mm-hmm.
services running. I have a machine learning
Mm-hmm.
model. I have an agent. I have 10 agents. I need to collect revenue from these agents. I need to pay somebody for compute. I need to do this. I need to do that. I have 10 services running. Why do I need to keep going, putting credit card in each one of them? Why do I have to
Hmm.
keep using 10 other tokens to pay for it? I put it in my account, put it in my wallet, everything gets done, gets consumed. Either payment comes in, payment goes out. You don't have to worry about it. It's fully
Mm-hmm.
integrated with each other, so you don't have to worry about that payment method. So that is a stack which we have now, which is what
Mm-hmm.
we have launched in a very light way, but now we're starting
Mm-hmm.
to actually showcase, not showcase, but launch the components. But you can understand, I mean, this is not a small task. Just
No,
building
it's
one
not.
agent one is easy, but to build this whole stack where all these components kind of work with each other, they can actually deliver the result. Now we're coming to a point where we are now releasing the product, which showcases the whole thing. So you can do the whole thing. And one of the main things it's rewind back to is if I go to a normal large language model and I look at it, and there are different techniques how these large language models actually give me the outcome. Some of them have this chain of thought reinforcement learning attached, like the DeepSeek one, which this is why they do
Mm-hmm.
quite well. They had reinforcement learning. ChatGPT has their own style, and you can fine tune it to do different things, although you start from the same base. So we are releasing our own large language model, which is tuned for agents. So
Oh,
the
wow.
objective here is to use a large language model which can enable agents to break down the tasks better and understand the tasks. So it's not oriented on philosophical conversations or
Hmm.
coming up with hallucinations. It's very much into, so you wouldn't, it wouldn't be probably not as good as some of the more essay type large language models, but it's better at understanding the task that it needs to deliver, and actually to find the agents who can deliver those tasks. So assessment of how the action is going to be
Hmm.
carried out. So that will be our own large language model, which will be very tuned to actually delivering applications.
What's that model called?
It's called Cortex LLM. So we're going to call it Cortex LLM. So by the time you release this, hopefully it will be already out in the market. But yeah, I mean that's a model which is one of the models in Web3, which is actually tuned on its own rather than just a deployment of any other model, any other open source model. So this is a
Amazing. Well, sir, if you are essentially like this is the whole ball game in a way, right? We just discussed how the key constraints is lack of infrastructure, lack of interoperability. Fetch is working on building that infrastructure, that interoperability. That includes all the different tech layers you described. And one key piece of that is models that are more optimized for agents, not optimized for, in the case of large frontier models, just trying to do everything, right? It's trying, oh, we're going to do everything. You're saying, no, we're going to be more focused on agents, what agents work, how do you find agents? And you're launching with Cortex. Well, thank you, sir, very much for taking the time and demystifying a pretty tricky topic. I really appreciate all of what you shared and what you're building for the world. It's very exciting times.
Thank you. Amazing questions. I really enjoyed it because I think it's quite interesting when you actually know and you can actually engage with the other side and actually describe. The questions are great. So thank you very much.
Well, well, the answers are even better. So thank you so much. We'll have to have you back on. I would love to have you back on in the future sometime. We could get a sequel conversation, get more in depth on Cortex and more in depth on where else you see it going. I would love to do that in the future. But thanks again. And we'll have links to all of this in the show notes. Best luck to you guys and talk to you soon. Thanks again.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, there you have it. Thanks again to Humayun Sheikh, CEO of Fetch AI. And thank you to you, dear listener, and thank you to your AI agents. If you are an AI agent, please convey my thanks to your human buddy agents. Please rate this 5-star. Please subscribe to AI Curious on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. AI agents, humans alike, be well. Thanks again. See you next time.